to dive deeper into the nature of our reality, please welcome YouTube star Vsauce3 and Jake Roper.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Hi, hello there. How are you? Yeah, that sounds pretty good, I guess. Heard a lot of good. Kind of sounded like a cat dying, but it was great. Hi there. As Cosmo said, my name is Jake Roper, and I run a YouTube channel called Vsauce3. And on Vsauce3, I talk about video games or comic books or movies, and I explore the science behind them, be it physics or psychology, philosophy, history, really whatever I find interesting at the time. And I love it because it's giving fictional worlds more of a reality. It's not just this passive thing, it actually has importance. There's things we can learn from it. And I'm in a room filled with people who not only build fictional worlds, but also explore them in their own right. And I think that's fascinating. And what Cosmo was saying, we're going to talk about a little bit if reality is real. And I want to preface by saying that I don't have a feeling either way. I think it's just an interesting thought experiment. It's a way to think about our existence in a different way and just question it, which I always find interesting. It's never about telling people how to think, it's about making them think. So with that, I want to go back in time 21 years ago to a lovely land of 1997. It was wonderful then, wasn't it? I actually don't know what was happening. But there was a magazine back when magazines were a thing called Next Generation. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Next Generation. Anyone remember that magazine? No? A little bit? It's fantastic. It was a great video game magazine, and on their cover in February 1997, it was this. A shot of Unreal, the video game Unreal, which is no longer being made, but it is a great graphics engine. And the thing I love about this is right there where it says, this is an actual PC game screenshot. Because now it's like, yeah, it's funny. But at the time, that blew my mind. As a little kid, I was like 9 years old. I actually ripped that cover off and put it on my Gateway PC on the side. We didn't have Windows back in the day, so that was like on the side of my computer case. And I thought it was amazing. I wanted my computer to be able to play that because it looked insane. But then we fast forward to now. And what do we have? Well, we have games that look like this, like God of War, which isn't even the pinnacle of how things can look. But to me, it's a representation of how things have progressed, how technology has advanced. Because on a technical level, everything is better than what we just saw from that Unreal screenshot. The physics, the lighting, the way that things work, the way the world interacts with the characters feels more real. Has anyone played God of War yet?
Yeah.
I like there was more enthusiasm for that than how you were doing today, which is fine. It is a great game. But the thing about it that I really loved, there's little moments, like when you're walking around and you walk through snow and the snow actually is disturbed. And it's those nuances that make it feel more real than things before. I remember, I think it was Far Cry 2, where you could actually interact with trees and branches. You could shoot them off, and it's those little things that oh, I can do that in real life. This is more real than what came before. So I like that, and I'm going to take a sip of water and awkwardly stare at all of you. Thank you! I did it! I'm hydrated! Oh, what a dream! What a dream. Now let's move on to the next slide, which is nothing. A lot of hype for nothing. So, as these video games advance, a question that I have in my mind is, when do video games hit a point where they're indistinguishable from reality? When we can't tell a difference anymore? But then also, does it have to be? And we'll get to that point later. Because my main question is, what we kind of brought up earlier, is reality real? That is to say, are we not living in a video game already? Could this be what we are in right now, a simulation? So, we're going to do a lot of hypotheticals today. And by today, I mean for the next 6 minutes and 25 seconds. So there's the simulation hypothesis. Have you heard of this before? No. Well, now you will. So the simulation hypothesis basically says that if there is a civilization, a post-human civilization that gets significantly advanced enough technologically that they could create simulated universes and that we would be in one of them. And in this, there are two realities. There are two worlds. There is there we go, primary world, which is where the simulation is being run, and then there is also the secondary world, which is where we exist in the simulation. Now, for this, you need three factors to really immerse the user into thinking that they are in reality. The first is immersion. The second is absorption, and the third is saturation. And what's cool about that is that we're already doing that with VR. That's what the VR experience is about, creating certain levels of that. So back to God of War. The character of Kratos, I don't need to see his cells. I don't need to see the blood actually pumping through his body to understand that he is the semblance of a real character, that he is a version of reality, just like I don't need to see your atoms or your gut flora to know that you are real people. But are you? I don't know if you're real. If you look at somebody next to you that you don't know, how do you know that they're actually a real person and not an NPC that's been programmed to act like a human being? We just assume that they're real. And in these video games, these characters react to certain things or they don't. You can't just walk through a wall in a video game unless it's actually been programmed that way, because that's what your character can do. But you can't walk through a wall generally. Why? It's not a real wall. It's not a physical, actual thing. It's just lines of code that say that this is a wall. And just like this stage that I'm on, I know I'm not going to fall through it because it's a real thing. I don't need to see the atoms that make it up. It's atomic structure. I just understand that it is real. I believe that it is real. It's not just an artificial boundary. So that brings me to another question that I have for you. How did you get here? How did you get here today? Did you walk? Did you drive? You drove? Very cool. Was it a long drive? Oh, very neat. Okay, it's interesting. Yeah. I don't believe you, because I didn't see you actually drive here. You're just telling me that you drove here. I didn't see you walk through the door. I didn't see you sit here. Literally, you all existed when I walked on stage. And in the case of me, I didn't exist until I walked on stage, maybe. We don't know. But it's world Gestalt. It's this idea that everything exists to a degree. We take all these ideas that we have, we take the information that you had to get here somehow, you just didn't appear, and I use that to then create a world that exists, that makes sense to me, even though it might not have. Poof, you could have just been there. I have no idea, but I believe that you drove, even though he probably didn't. He's a liar. If you see him later, he's lying to you. But you're a very nice man. I like your glasses. Yeah, no problem. A theory that I have, not a theory, it's not a theory, it's an idea. It's a thing that I like to mull over in my head, which is that the universe is expanding and growing. We know that. But maybe it's expanding and growing forever because it's still loading. It hasn't finished rendering yet. You know, we have the speed of light. That's a universal law that we all have to abide to, but maybe it's actually just something that was programmed. Maybe the reason that exists is because there's just a certain draw distance to this map that we're on. Just like in a video game, you can't explore forever. There is a limit. And just when we look outside, there's a limit to how far we can see. And then when we walk closer towards it, we get to see more. It resolves into a bigger picture. But not everything needs to exist for every user in it at the same time. Not everything needs to be rendered, needs to exist. And when you look at VR, when you put on a headset, what is in front of you is real. But what's behind you might not be rendered yet. It's not until you turn around that it exists. And now everything behind me could no longer be there. It saves processing power. Solipsism is the idea that only our own mind is certain to exist. And to me, this idea of simulation theory is kind of a technological version of that. That I don't know that anything exists. You don't know that anything exists outside of your own mind, but you just believe that it does. So, if we are in a simulation, why? Why would somebody do that? Well, there's a philosophy professor named Nick Bostrom, and he wrote an article, or a paper, really, called Are We in a Computer Simulation? Are we in a video game? And in it, he brings up something called the Ancestor Simulation, which is the idea that if a civilization were to create one of these, they would do it because they want to see how the past lived. And I thought that was interesting because it reminds me of all the video games that I love, like Civilization or Age of Empires or even The Sims, where we create a version of what was or what we know and then get to interact with it and get to change it, agree. So it kind of brings up this idea, which is that maybe we are Sims. You know? When we look at Sims, they don't actually speak languages. What is it called? What's their language? Yes, Simlish. But to them, maybe it makes sense. It doesn't to us, but to them it does. So maybe we are in that. Maybe we can still make video games and computer games and all these different simulations that we want, but it's actually underneath the one that we're actually in. It's like a turtles all the way down situation, where there's all these different kinds of simulations happening. And the fear with that is that if we end up making more and then they make more and it goes on forever, that the actual system that we're running on would then crash or have to be unplugged and we'd all disappear into nothingness. Yay! Enjoy your time here at VRLA. So it brings me to this allegory of the cave, which is an idea that Plato had. And I love it because in this allegory of the cave, Plato suggests that you have a room or a cave full of people. They're all chained up, they're prisoners. And they're looking at a wall. And this is all they've known is this wall in front of them. And this wall has shadows being projected onto it by a fire behind them that they've also never seen. They've also never seen the people that are next to them. They never talked to them. So these shadows are all that they know. And then one day, one of the prisoners finally escapes. He's free and he goes outside to the real world. But it doesn't make sense. He doesn't understand it. What is this that I'm seeing? It's not real. This isn't my world. So he goes back into the cave because that is what he knows to be reality. And it reminds me of when you put on a VR headset. You know what you're seeing isn't real, yet you interact and react as if it were. When something comes towards you, you want to move out of the way. But you know it's not going to hurt you. But you still feel like it is. And then when you take it off, you're back in your reality. You understand what is real. So the problem with figuring out if we're in a simulation now or not is that any evidence we got to prove for or against it could also be simulated. Neil deGrasse Tyson had an interesting thought when asked this question, and he said something to the degree of, if you have a civilization that can create a simulation, why would it only make one? Why wouldn't it make billions of them? And then if we take a step back and we look at all these billions of simulations, and we also look at that one that is real, that real universe, billions of simulated universes, and you took a dart and you threw it at it, what would you be more likely to hit? So with that said, enjoy all of these simulated worlds you're going to be experiencing here at VRLA. And regardless of if we are in a simulation or if we are just on a rock flying through the universe, I hope you have a fun time. And I hope you enjoy your life, be it real or not. And as always, thanks for watching. Thank you.